everybody. It's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all once again for this evening e-seminar. Before I could proceed, or Mr. J. Ravindran would proceed, kindly ensure that all your audio is muted so that everything what is spoken by the speaker will be audible to each and every one of you. Thank you. On to Mr. J. Ravindran.
Welcome you all to this evening. Please wait for 2 or 3 minutes. Ma'am is to join. Please wait. Please bear with us.
A very good evening, Mr. Ravindran. Vanakkam to everybody.
Welcome, ma'am. It's indeed a great privilege and honor to welcome you, ma'am, on this e-seminar.
Yes.
When we requested, ma'am was kind enough to immediately accept and deliver her speech. For introduction to the people who are present here, ma'am was enrolled. She completed a BL degree in University of Bangalore. She was one of the leading intellectual property law who represented India for a moot court competition which was held in USA. Ma'am was an expert as an advisor to advise the parliamentary committee with regard to Copyright Amendment Act and Patent Act. She was designated as a senior counsel in the year 2013 and she became a judge of Delhi High Court in the year 2017. Ma'am has a long journey to go. Most important is that she is one of the eminent judges of the Delhi High Court, a kind-hearted gentlewoman. Ma'am, I really thank you for accepting our invitation. And more interestingly is that ma'am knows to speak in Tamil. So, vanakkam, ma'am. So, vanakkam, I request you to say a few lines in Tamil, ma'am, before going into the subject. The topic of the day, as told in the invite, is that force majeure in commercial and tenancy disputes. Ma'am, I request you to deliver your speech, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm grateful for accepting, ma'am.
எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். And இந்த வெபினார்ல வந்து நான் சொல்றது கேட்கறதுக்கு on a Friday evening you all joined me and Mr. Ravindranக்கு ரொம்ப நன்றி for inviting me to the Madras Bar Association. It is wonderful. நீங்க உங்களை எல்லாம் மீட் பண்றது நல்லா இருக்கு. இப்போ சென்னை வந்து ரொம்ப மாசம் ஆயிடுச்சு. லாஸ்ட் இயர் தான் வந்தது. அதுக்கப்புறம் வர முடியல. I hope all of you are safe. நீங்க எல்லாம் சேஃபா இருக்கணும். கோவிட் எல்லாருக்கும் அஃபெக்ட் ஆகக்கூடாது. அஃபெக்ட் ஆனாலும் நீங்க எல்லாம் ரிகவர் பண்ணி நல்லா பிராக்டிஸ் பண்ணணும். ஹைகோர்ட்ல எப்படி ஹியரிங்ஸ் நடக்குதோ, இன்ஃபேக்ட் எங்களோட ஹஸ்பண்ட் கூட அப்பியர் ஆறாங்க மெட்ராஸ் ஹைகோர்ட்ல ரெகுலர்லி ஈவன் த்ரூ வீடியோ கான்ஃபரன்சிங். ஸோ நான் ரொம்ப வாட்டி மெட்ராஸ் ஹைகோர்ட் வந்திருக்கேன். அண்ட் ஐ ஹவ் அ லாட் ஆஃப் ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் இன் த பார் தேர் and it's a wonderful bar. And Chennai is close to my hometown, that is Bangalore. And I learned Tamil and I can actually read and write Tamil with letters. எதுக்குன்னா எங்களோட பாட்டி வந்து she belonged to Vellore and that's why I learned Tamil when I was very very young. And we used to read in our home Kalgi, Ananda Vigadan, Kumudam, all these magazines, and it used to be part of my childhood. And therefore, I believe I'm a true South Indian, married to a true North Indian, and therefore an Indian. Thank you very much for inviting me today for this webinar. நாங்களெல்லாம் இப்போ கேட்டுட்டே இருக்கோம் force majeure என்னது. ஏன்னா whenever we have seen the pandemic which has started in March, suddenly there are a lot of changes in what we see in the legal profession also. There are a lot of people who feel, for example, I should drop a will because it is kind of affecting everybody. The way we think, the way our relationships work, the way we feel about our families, the way we feel about our colleagues, our society as a whole has completely changed since the time the pandemic has happened. I think in a way, the pandemic has made us more self-introspection we are doing. We are valuing our family members more. We value our spouse, our elders, our children more. We are getting more time to spend with them. Though there are so many bad things about the pandemic, I also think that there are a lot of good things about the pandemic. And in that sense, I feel at least the pandemic has given us a moment to sit down, to reflect, to think what are our priorities in life, what do we give importance to in life, and what do we feel about the way we want to live our lives in future. So let us not just look at only the negativity. Stop seeing how many people are affected by the pandemic every day. That makes us all very depressed. So we should spend time keeping ourselves fit, doing maybe yoga or some kind of physical exercise, and also praying to God, and also spending time with our family during this time, and learning and reading of the law as lawyers. This is a good time to research, read the latest judgments, and to be ready when more work will come. And in any case, force majeure is something that is going to affect all of us in the legal profession. So what will happen? Somebody will have a supply contract. He has to sell the products. However, he had to import the raw material. The import has been stopped due to the pandemic. So will the person be liable in damages? In Sale of Goods Act, force majeure will have a main impact. In a tenancy dispute, for example, the tenant is unable to pay. He does not have any income from the shop. Should he be made to pay? Should he not be made to pay? Should the landlord and tenant sit down together and negotiate something? Because even the landlord, if the tenant vacates the shop, may have a difficulty in finding a new tenant. So these are problems with tenancy relationships. There are much bigger issues in commercial contracts also, because even in commercial contracts, force majeure plays a major role. For example, in one of the cases, two of the cases which I will be talking about today, you will see in a toll plaza, a toll has to be collected in a toll plaza. However, there is no traffic at all because of the lockdown. If there is no traffic, how will the toll be collected? How will the minimum guarantee amount be paid to the National Highway Authority? So these are issues which will now continue to affect us on a daily basis, and you as lawyers would have to advise your clients from the smallest contract to the biggest contract. Force majeure will have a very important role. Force majeure may sound very complicated. It is a very simple concept. It is what is not within the control of parties. Like, it is a force which is beyond the control of parties. And as you all know, Black's Law Dictionary defines force majeure as something which cannot be anticipated or controlled. It could be fire, it could be earthquake, it could be floods, it could be lightning, it could be anything. War, it could be a strike, it could be a riot, or it could be a pandemic. There are so many force majeure events that can happen. Usually, all contracts have force majeure clauses. They will say that if something like this happens, what will be the consequence of that? So once there is a clause in the agreement, the clause will prevail and the parties would be bound by that particular clause as to what will happen if there is a force majeure event which takes place. So nowadays, all of you know, periya malls, even in small or big cities. In the malls, there are various shops which are given on lease or license. Now, all the malls are closed. All the film theaters are closed. There are minimum guarantees which these shop people have to pay on the basis of sales, on the basis of revenues, on the basis of, for example, the number of footfalls there would be in the mall. So there are various factors which determine how much is the monthly occupation amount that has to be paid. Now, all these will be affected. Malls are not open. I don't know when they will again be open. So the mall owner and the tenant will have to sit down and negotiate it if there is no force majeure clause in the contract. But mostly all contracts, commercial contracts, have force majeure clauses. If they have the force majeure clause, the primacy is given to the contractual terms. So normally what will happen is, in the force majeure clause, it will say, in case of any riot or force majeure event or any fire, earthquake, etc., etc., if the shop cannot be opened, he will get a remission of 25%, 50%, or full remission, full discount, or there may be none. It may say, because of the prime place that this mall is there, or the shop is there, or this, premises is located in, there is no remission in the contract. So if there is no clause in the contract dealing with force majeure, can a court step in and give any discount to the rent or to the tenant, to the lessee, to the licensee, etc.? These are the disputes that arise in the case of force majeure. There are different types of contracts of tenancy that we have seen. There are oral tenancies, it is month to month. In those cases, the tenant has the option to go away. But so long as he is in occupation, there is an obligation to pay. There could be also short-term tenancies, 6 months, 1 year, like hostels, PGs, Airbnb. Those are all short-term leases or short-term tenancies. There could be long-term leases with force majeure clauses. There could be lease agreements with the revenue sharing arrangements. There could be lease agreements with monthly payments plus minimum guarantees. So there are different types of contracts which people have entered into in the context of leases. Now, what happens? What should a lawyer do? What is the basic provision that will govern this? The first and most important provision which we need to look at is the contractual provision itself. Now, if there is a contract, it will be as per the contractual clause, and section 32 of the Indian Contract Act will come into play. So that is the first provision that you need to keep in mind. So as per section 32, if you see section 32, it clearly provides that, if there is a impossibility or if there is a contingency which happens, uncertain future event, then that cannot be enforced until and unless the event has happened. And if the event becomes impossible, then the contract will become void. So what happens if the contract becomes void? The lessee can then say, look here, there is a force majeure event like an earthquake, like a pandemic. I'm not able to open the shop. So I take the option, since the contract would be void, then I would not be able to pay. And then he will have to surrender the tenancy. He cannot keep it. That is the most important thing. Now, there was a Delhi High Court judgment which I'll be showing you, which I'll be telling you about, which said that the tenant cannot continue to retain the premises and then say force majeure will apply. That cannot apply. It cannot work like that. So first of all, you will have to look at section 32 of the Indian Contract. The next thing that you need to look at, suppose there is no clause in the contract, is section 56 of the Indian Contract Act. That is an agreement to do an impossible act. Now, what is an impossibility? Frustration. This is also called as frustration of contracts. So what is an impossibility has also been defined by the Supreme Court, and there are some very interesting judgments I will tell you about under section 56. Normally in leases and in tenancy contracts, there is a 1968 judgment of the Supreme Court called Raja Dhruvdev Chand versus Raja Har Mahinder Singh. This was a very interesting case. What happened in this case was, there was a agricultural land in Punjab which the tenant had taken on rent, and that land could not be used by the tenant because of the 1947 partition which took place. So the tenant sought refund of the rent paid by him for 2 seasons, Kharif season of 1947 and Rabi season of 1948. So the Supreme Court was dealing with a case relating to a landlord-tenant dispute during partition period. And in that judgment, the court held that in India, we cannot travel outside section 56 of the Contract Act for the purpose of frustration, of arguing frustration. We can only argue within the confines of section 56, meaning thereby the law of frustration of contract is totally codified in Indian law. The provision is what is there in section 56 and nothing more. There cannot be a common law of frustration. This is a statutory law of frustration. So the court said that in the case of a lease agreement or a tenancy agreement, there cannot be any waiver, suspension or exemption of rent, because frustration would apply only to an executory contract and not to an executed contract. If there is a completed contract, then frustration does not apply, and therefore, as per this judgment of Raja Harmahinder Singh, section 56 will not apply to tenancies and lease agreements. So this is a very important judgment. This judgment has held the field even till date. There are two judgments of the Supreme Court which have, kind of affirmed this view. One is Lakshmipati versus Nityananda Reddy in 2003, and then Energy Watchdog, Justice Nariman's judgment in 2017. So the old judgment of Raja Harmahinder Singh relating to partition governs the field even today as far as section 56 is concerned. There was another judgment of the Division Bench of Delhi High Court which also upheld it, where Hotel Leela Ventures had filed a writ against the Airport Authority of India, saying that they are not liable to pay certain charges. And the court said no. As per the judgment of Raja Harmahinder Singh, executory contracts alone are capable of being frustrated and not an executed contract. So if there is kind of an executory contract where the transaction has to still not yet completely fructified, it has not yet completely concluded, only then the frustration principle would apply, and not in the case of executed contracts. Now then, the third provision, which is very relevant in the context of lease agreements and tenancy agreements, etc., that would be section 108BE of the Transfer of Property Act. This section provides that if the premises has been rendered substantially and permanently unfit for occupation, if it has been rendered unfit, then in that case the lessee's obligations are discharged. Now, what happens? What is the way to determine whether a premises has been permanently and substantially rendered unfit for the purpose? Even here, the standard which the court has applied is very, very high. Suppose for some reason, there is some riot and the building is demolished, but the land is still there. So the court holds that in this kind of a case, in Lakshmipati, the court held that unless and until the land itself vanishes, this provision cannot be invoked. Section 108BE. It says the mere destruction of a building on the land is not total destruction of the subject matter of a lease, so the demise continues. But if by some convulsion of nature, the very site ceases to exist by being swallowed up altogether or buried in the depths of the sea, it seems clear that it is property. I'm just sharing this with you so that you can see this particular observation of the Supreme Court. It says that it seems clear that any lease of the property must come to an end. It cannot be argued like that. So this is in the Lakshmipati case. This has been again confirmed by the Supreme Court in Shah Ratan C. Khimji, where the Supreme Court clarified that in cases concerning a lease agreement, it is not only the superstructure that is leased out of the lease of a site, but the tenanted premises had been demolished and destroyed. It was held that the tenancy is not terminated if the site is held intact. This is again same as in Raja Dhruv and Harmahinder Singh judgment. However, there is one big relief for tenants, and that is equitable jurisdiction. The court can consider suspension of rent, and that was held in Surendranath Bibran versus Stephen Court in AIR 66, Supreme Court 1361. The court held that the proportionate rent in this case, where part of the property only was, the tenant that was given, had taken on rent a big property, but only part of the property was in his possession and the remaining part could not be enjoyed by the tenant. So the Supreme Court directed that a proportionate part of the rent could be, discounted, and only that part will be paid. So same situation in Raichur Matam, Prabhakar versus Rawatmal. In 2004, 4 SCC 766, the Supreme Court held that suspension of rent may be claimed by the tenant if the lessee is dispossessed for any reason. Suppose a third party claims a right in the property and he obtains a decree, then if he is dispossessed, the right to the obligation to pay rent can be discharged. However, in Aranya Hospitality Management versus Downdial, this is the case I wanted to tell you about. If the tenant cannot use the property for the purpose for which it is leased, for example, suppose there was a restaurant which had to be run and the restaurant is not given approval by the governmental authorities, but the man continues to hold the premises. He is hoping that he will get the approval shortly. The court holds that he cannot enjoy the property and then seek suspension of the rent at the same time. So therefore, if he is enjoying the property, he has to pay the rent. Simply because he cannot use it, you cannot claim suspension of rent. Now recently, in the context of a landlord and tenant, Ramanand versus Girish Soni, this is the latest judgment of our court. And in this case, what had happened was, as you all know, there is a very famous market in Delhi called Khan Market. The tenant was running a very big shoe store in Khan Market, and he had an old statutory tenancy for rupees 300 per month. There was a decree of eviction which was passed, and after the decree of eviction which was passed, the tenant had come in revision and the court had fixed an interim rent of 3.5 lakhs. Now, during the pandemic, the tenant moved an application saying, I should not be made to pay this rent because I am not using the shop. So the court then held that, no, as per since you're enjoying the shop, you have not surrendered the shop, you have to pay the rent. However, there are various factors which the court can consider, like nature of the property, financial and social status of the parties, the amount of rent, any other contractual condition, protection under any executive order, and other factors. So in that case, only the schedule of the payment of rent, like installment payment, was directed by the court. So the entire conclusion would be that you go under section 32, then under 56, and then section 108 of the Transfer of Property Act. These are the broad 3 provisions which apply in the case of tenancies, leases, and any other licensing arrangements. And if any relief can be given to the court, by the court under equitable jurisdiction for any particular reason, then that can be sought from the court. Now, coming to if there are, of course, in the case of malls, etc., there are profit sharing arrangements and sale turnover arrangements which are entered into. In those kind of cases, since there is no profits at all, since there are no sales, as per the terms of the contract, there could be a possibility that the tenant need not pay. However, that would be governed purely by the contractual terms. Now, coming to force majeure in commercial disputes. Now, in the case of force majeure in commercial disputes, I wanted to know, is this useful if I share the screen like this? Mr. Ravindran, or anyone can tell me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It is very useful, ma'am. You can.
Okay.
Very, very useful.
Then I'll do that. So in force majeure in commercial disputes, the issue is what happens, for example, when there are bank guarantees, when there are securities which are involved, when the share price, for example, in one case, what happened, the shares were kept as the security. However, due to the pandemic, the value of the shares kept falling, and the company with whom the shares were kept as a security wanted to encash the shares. Now, the person who had kept the security kept saying, sorry, the share market may have fallen today, but after the pandemic, the share market will improve. But if he sells the shares today, I lose my shareholding of that company. So these can be extremely complex situations because of the pandemic. So the Supreme Court had the chance of looking at this kind of pandemic force majeure clauses in a very important power purchase agreement. And in that case, if you see, this is the landmark case of the Supreme Court in 2017 called Energy Watchdog versus CERC. What had happened in this case was there was a power purchase agreement which was entered into with Adani Powers in 2007, and they had agreed, they had quoted a tariff which was based on, you know, them mining coal from Indonesia and importing it into India. However, due to a change in the Indonesian law, there was a problem and they could not stick to the old tariff which they had quoted. Now, the question was whether Adani Powers could invoke the force majeure clause to say that the change in the law in Indonesia is a force majeure event, which would allow them to invoke the force majeure clause to seek reduction in the tariff. But the Supreme Court held that when a contract contains a force majeure clause, which is found to be applicable, Section 56 does not have an application. So therefore, when the contractual provision is there, then Section 56 will not apply at all. In this case, since the change in the Indonesian law did not dislodge the fundamental basis of the contract, the rise in price of coal was not considered a frustrating event. It was held that the same did not constitute a force majeure event. So the logic is that, you know, when these commercial contracts are entered into, parties who enter into these contracts know about certain risks which are there in these kind of contracts. So every change in the law, every event cannot become a force majeure event. Now, the guidelines which are laid down in this judgment are extremely important in the context of commercial contracts, and they would therefore be applicable across all commercial relationships whenever we are discussing force majeure clauses. Now, force majeure would operate as part of a contract as a contingency under Section 32 of the Indian Contract Act. Independent of the contract, the doctrine of frustration could be invoked under Section 56. However, it will be depending on the clause which is in the contract. So all these conditions, in fact, I can circulate this presentation. You can take a look at this, but express terms of a contract cannot be ignored on a vague plea of equity. So this would apply even in the case of tenancies. Equitable jurisdiction can be invoked, but if there is a contractual condition, that has the primacy. Now, the number 6 is very important, risks associated with a contract. You know, every business comes with risk, and so parties should be making enough space for that risk to be able to be absorbed. Sorry. Now, the Supreme Court also holds that simply because it becomes onerous on a party, it does not become, you cannot say that I will not perform. The courts would generally not absolve performance because it has become onerous or due to an unforeseen turn of events. The doctrine of frustration has narrowed. This is very important. It is narrow and can be broadly applied, and mere rise in cost or expense does not lead to frustration. And if there is an alternative mode of performance, force majeure clause will not apply. So as you will see, the Supreme Court has held that, you know, contracts have to be honored. Frustration cannot be easily invoked unless there is a break in identity between the contract as envisioned originally and its performance in the alternate circumstances. Doctrine of frustration would not apply. So please see the high threshold which has been set by the Supreme Court in this matter. Now, this case was recently applied by the Delhi High Court in Halliburton Offshore in Vedanta. Now, in this case, what happened was there was a petroleum drilling operation in Rajasthan in 3 oil fields. So the plaintiff Halliburton was the person who was building the rig and all the, was constructing the petroleum plant, etc. However, prior to the COVID and pandemic coming in itself, there were deadlines which were there, which were not adhered to. But sometime around 18th March, the French experts had to be brought by the plaintiff for some consultancy and they could not come. And therefore, the plaintiff said, I am unable to perform because of the pandemic. But the defendant invoked the bank guarantees of running into more than about 200 crores in this case. So the company terminated the contract and invoked the bank guarantees. The question was whether stay can be given of the bank guarantees invocation on the basis of the force majeure event. Now, the question therefore was, could the COVID-19 be used to shield a party which is in breach already of its contractual obligations? And whether the question of force majeure would itself be an arbitrable dispute. This was the issue in this case. So, applying the principles in Energy Watchdog, the High Court observed that the question whether COVID-19 would justify non-performance or breach has to be examined on the facts and circumstances of each case. Every breach cannot be excused merely on the invocation of COVID-19 as a force majeure condition. The conduct of parties, the steps they had to take, compliance which was to be done, deadlines which were there in the contract prior to the outbreak must be examined to conclude the genuineness in invocation of force majeure and the action. Force majeure is to be interpreted narrowly. Excusing non-performance of contractual obligations is only in exceptional circumstances. There has to be a real reason and a real justification to invoke the force majeure clause. On the analysis of facts, it was found that the contractor was in breach prior to the outbreak, and even prior to the lockdown, completion of the project by the extended deadline was unlikely. Thus, the stay of encashment of bank guarantees was vacated, and repeated laxity of performance cannot be excused. Now, that was a case where force majeure did not help the contractor. Now we see another case where force majeure helped the person and relief was granted by the court. Now, this is another single judge of the Delhi High Court, MEP Infrastructure versus SDMC. In this, the question was whether the corporation, which had licensed out a highway for collecting toll, whether the toll had to be paid by the petitioner or not. There was an order by which the contractor was directed to pay rupees 20 crores every month. However, because of the force majeure event, which completely took away the, the collection of toll and the lockdown, there was no vehicles which were applying. The court then gave the benefit of the force majeure clause to the company. So ultimately, what happens is these principles as held in Energy Watchdog, Raja Harmahinder Singh, which are the old judgment and the new judgment of the Supreme Court, and similar judgments which have been followed by Delhi High Court. I'm not sure. I'm sure Madras High Court has also given some judgments on force majeure. When we are talking or discussing in the question answer session, we will be able to discuss it. And I really think that force majeure is a very important thing for lawyers. You will need to be ready with these kind of arguments from both sides. You may have to advise your clients on force majeure event, because it looks like, as per the reports, the COVID-19 can be stretched out. It could even be stretched out for a longer duration, maybe even till next year, till a vaccine is found. And there are bound to be a large number of contracts which are going to be affected. And I think maybe for the next 5 years or 10 years, courts will be full of these cases where, because of the pandemic, contracts have been changed, contracts have been affected, performance of contracts have been, have been completely, parties have also changed their positions because of performance. So you will be able to advise your clients whether they should settle, whether they should seek compensation, whether they should pay, whether they should negotiate, and all these factors you can keep in mind while dealing and advising on force majeure. So when Mr. Ravindran Kettitiranga Nayanar, what would be a very important topic which in the topic Padano and it is, so I suggested in the topic and he accepted it straight away as a very relevant topic. And I'm glad that, unlike IPR, which is very close to my heart, which was my area of essential practice of at least 70 to 80%, I wanted to speak on something which is non-IP, and though it is commercial in nature, I hope that this would be of some use to all of you today.
Ma'am, thank you so much. Within a matter of half an hour to 40 minutes, you had crystallized the entire subject into a very short nutshell. and made it very clear. And as you rightly said, ma'am, in the present scenario of our pandemic gripping us at large, the said topic was very useful. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, I think you would have one person who would interact with you. That's one Mr. Prakash. Prakash, are you able to hear me? Am I audible, Prakash? Mr. Prakash? Because he had already raised his hand and he wanted to interact. Okay, I'll just wait for Mr. Prakash. There's one more question, ma'am, in the chat box. That's from Mr. Palanisamy Nyanam. Mr. Palanisamy Nyanam, he wanted what is remedy for others? No, he has not completed the question. Mr. Palanisamy Nyanam, are you there? Or at least you could type the question so that I could ask the ma'am. It is half type. What is the remedy for the other side if other side? Mr. Palanisamy? Ma'am, I think you were very clear. Mr. Palanisamy, are you able to? Yeah, he's there, ma'am.
In the breach of contract, what is the remedy for other side? In financial crisis, what is the remedy for other side?
In which kind of contract?
Yes.
எந்த கான்ட்ராக்ட்ல கேக்குறீங்க எந்த
My personal experience, one of my party, I made a contract for the rent, and at the time of starting a pandemic, after the rent is over, both the party has signed for the rent, and after pandemic, the party is not occupy the building. The refusee gave rent. So what is the remedy for this?
It depends on what the rent amount is. If the rent amount is not covered by rent control legislation, then the free to file for recovery of
No, it is
must mute yourself. Then I can speak.
Ma'am? Yes. I think there's one Mr. Ramasubramaniam. I think it would be better if you would ask because the entire question is there in the time box. Mr. Ramasubramaniam? Ma'am, I shall read out the question to you, ma'am. Because I'm not able to find him in the...
I can see the question.
Yes, ma'am. Normally, Contract Act will prevail over the individual contract provisions. Kindly clarify how Section 56 will not apply when express provision is in the contract.
Yes. So this is a very crucial question because under Section 56, an agreement to do an impossible in itself is void. Now, what is an impossible act will be defined in the contract. It may not be, if it is written in the contract as to what is impossibility and what is the consequence of impossibility, then the contractual provision itself will govern Section 56. You cannot argue impossibility outside the contract if there is a clause in the contract. That is what I mean.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there's one Divya Dinesh who would wish to ask you. Divya?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Divya, you can go ahead.
Good evening, Your Lordship. This is Divya from Chennai.
Yes.
My question is very general, Your Lordship, not very technical. I have split the question. One is, I was very curious, was there any legal precedent for application of force majeure that can be used as the test case like this pandemic? Was there any precedent? And the second one is, does the doctrine of force majeure apply to contracts between individuals, or will it also apply to state and state-owned corporations? So what is the role of state in this, Your Lordship?
Okay. First of all, the question is, what was your first question? Whether
was there any legal precedent for application of force majeure that can be used as a test case in this pandemic?
Yes, in this pandemic, the 3 cases that I showed you, one was Ramanand, one was Halliburton, and one was MEP. All these 3 cases are of Delhi High Court in this pandemic.
Yes, Your Lordship.
You can read them. They are delivered in May and June. These
Yes,
just 2-3 months ago. Okay, so
Yes.
that is these 3 judgments are in coronavirus pandemic itself. And secondly, yes, force majeure would apply even in state corporations and state contracts and all other contracts, because as you all know, the government and the state is only one contracting party in those kind of cases. And force majeure would apply even in those contracts. The question is, how will it apply will depend on the terms of the contract itself.
Obliged, Your Lordship. Thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am, there's one Mr. Praveen Selvaraj, ma'am. Praveen Selvaraj. How to his question, Mr. Praveen Selvaraj, it would be nice if you could interact directly with ma'am. Yes, ma'am, he is there.
Yes, please.
Mr. Praveen Selvaraj. Ma'am, I think some problem with his audio. What he wishes to ask is how to differentiate a risk from force majeure in circumstances where the line is blurred. For example, he's given a ship on a voyage where certain risks are the act of God. How to separate risk from force majeure?
In the case of shipping contracts, normally act of God is very clearly defined. And any storm, for example, pirates taking over the ship, all these kind of factors are very easily defined, and they are very well settled also. And I think Madras High Court would have the best judgments on this, Bombay High Court, because you all have admiralty law and law of shipping much more than our courts here. And I think that in the case of shipping, there is no difficulty. How act of God will apply in the case of goods getting drowned in the sea, if the goods are susceptible to fire, if they are destructible goods. So the act of God and risk is very different. Act of God will be something which is not within the control of man. If it is within the control of man, if it's a wrong decision taken by the captain of the ship, then that would not be an act of God, right? If it's an accident, it would not be an act of God. Those are risks which are associated with ships and their voyages, but acts of God could be things which are outside the control of person.
In continuation with what you have just said, the act of the person who is taking the decision. Similarly, there's yet another question from Abraham Matthew. You'll have to differentiate that, ma'am, because what he says is a lockdown is enforced by authorities. So that's okay, that's due to pandemic, but then the lockdown is enforced by authorities. So what would be the grounds for the tenant to claim if the tenant has been temporarily dispossessed?
See, what happens is in this kind of a case, therefore, if there is no clause in the contract itself, that is why it is so debated, right? The problem is the tenant has no option but to close his shop. So is there a temporary dispossession? No, he still keeps his goods there. So what can he do? He can either open the shop, which he cannot do because of the lockdown. He has to then give up the shop, which he does not want to do. If he's saying, okay, this lockdown is like going on for 1 year, I cannot keep the shop anymore, then he surrenders the shop. But if it is a 1 or 2 month thing and he knows that it is going to come back into normal, like for example, there was a very interesting newspaper article last week that in Khan market, the footfalls have increased now after the pandemic. They are coming back to 30, 40, 50% of the previous. So when a shop owner is running a business, running a shop, he knows that he has some buffer, to run his business. He has to take that risk while judging whether he wants to keep the shop or he doesn't want to keep the shop. If he doesn't want to keep the shop, he's free to surrender it and say, I cannot pay the rent. But he cannot say, I will keep the shop and then I will not pay the rent. Then the better thing is he and landlord have to sit down and negotiate, and maybe they will agree for 50% of the rent or pay in installments, pay it later, something like that.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, now I tried Mr. Nitesh PV, but then I'm not able to connect him. He wants to know about contractual minimum guarantee, ma'am.
Yes.
He just says, how about that contractual minimum guarantee in this kind of
Yes, see, there are minimum guarantees based on sales turnover in the contract itself. So if the minimum guarantee is linked to the sales turnover and there are no sales, maybe the force majeure clause may apply in that case. Because that has nothing to do with the pandemic, because it will say, the clause must be saying, as per sales, you will give 10%. So if there is no sale, then you can't.
No, I think he's come. Nitesh? Nitesh, was your question answered? Because I was not able to locate you earlier.
Perfect. It's not. I would like to reframe the question.
Yes, please.
The minimum guarantee is not connected to the sales. It's a fixed minimum guarantee, not connected to anything.
Okay. If the minimum guarantee is not connected to the sale, like in malls, etc., then there is a problem. You may have to negotiate with the mall owner, because obviously I can't give you legal advice being a judge.
Understood, ma'am. And secondly, what if there is a contractual lock-in period?
What if there is a contractual lock-in?
Lock-in.
Yes. If the see, ultimately in the contract law, the contract is supreme, isn't it?
Okay.
So if there is a lock-in, you're bound by the lock-in. If there is none, then there is none.
All right. Okay. And one more, ma'am, quickly. The section 138. I know this is out of this subject, but just section 138. There is a dispute. There's some talks going on. Any updates, clues from your side?
On 138 about the law which is being amended. No idea. I know that there is. I know it only from media reports that there is some amendments which are being considered. I have no idea.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
There's one Mr. Subbu Balakrishnan. Mr. Subbu Balakrishnan, you can ask ma'am directly, because your question relates to a tenant running a restaurant and he not being able to pay the rent. Yes, Mr. Subbu Balakrishnan?
I think I'm on mute.
No, I have unmuted you, Subbu Balakrishnan, sir.
So the question is, the tenant is running a restaurant, and due to the lockdown, he is not able to run the restaurant. At the same time, since he is occupying the premises, he has to pay rent. But even if he wants to vacate the restaurant and remove his goods, he cannot do that because there is a lockdown. So would the Impossible Act become applicable here?
In such kind of situations, obviously now the absolute lockdown has gone away in most cities, I think. So that was only for a period of 1 or 2 months. And in any event, there are various provisions which permit you can, first of all, there can be a notice which can be given saying, I want to surrender the premises. Secondly, you can seek, the restaurant owner can go to the SDM, take permission to remove the goods. I don't think that this is, such a big issue, because the lockdown is semi-lockdown in most places now. It is no longer
Thank
a
you.
full lockdown.
Thank you.
Shri Lalit Taruna, I can see your message in the chat box. You can directly interact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am. See, this is a general question. See, basically in contract, we used to write force majeure clause. See, in some contractual terms, I have seen that a notice is included. My worry is, if there is a notice is included, it becomes inevitable to send a notice. In some times of like pandemic, where there is no means of notice, then it will become a burden. So if we do not include a notice as a provision in the clauses, will that be challenged by way of equitable principle on equitability in future, or can we just remove the provision of notice in the contract?
From what I understand, you are saying to invoke the force majeure condition, is there a notice which is required?
Yeah.
If the contract does not say that there is a notice which is required.
Yeah, if is it necessary that we should include a notice? If we do not include a notice is necessary, will that be challenged tomorrow in the courts?
See, either way, whether there is a notice requirement under the contract or not, if a party wants to seek benefit of force majeure, it is,
Okay.
how will one seek it without issuing a notice?
Okay.
There is no presumption of force majeure, is what I'm saying. Somebody has to invoke it, somebody has to say no, and then there is a dispute about it, isn't it?
Correct. See, in case we can do it in future. See, if I'm claiming for 1 month waiver, and after that 1 month period is over, can this ground be taken as a kind
It will depend on the circumstances. I won't be able
circumstance?
to say.
Okay, sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, I've got a surprise for you now. There's one person, Mr. Raghavan. I think he belongs to your alma mater of Kumarans. He would like to interact with you, ma'am.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Raghavan, Mr. Raghavan. He was so very eager, ma'am, to interact with you. He says that, Mr. Raghavan,
Yeah, Pratibha.
Mr. Raghavan, it will be good if you could even unmute your video. You
I
can
can
see,
see.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
How are you? Yes, you muted yourself. You should unmute. Yes.
Hey, you're able to see me?
Yes. How are you?
Good, good. Pratibha, you're able to make out, right?
Yes, little bit, faintly.
Okay. So from the
Okay, yes, absolutely. So you are practicing in Chennai.
oh no. I had nothing to do with this. Actually, Ravindran's sister, Indubala, is my friend.
Okay.
So when she
Nice.
sent me, I said, oh, okay, she's my classmate. I know her pretty well. So let me join in. I think I'm the only non-legal, non-professional participant in this.
So you're kind of piloting yourself into a legal webinar.
No, I'm just
You're gate crashing into this.
kind of. Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, I would just like to inform you that not only legal eminence or legal persons are here, ma'am, even non-legal persons have logged in into this, especially because it relates to tenancy and commercial
Okay.
disputes. Ma'am, if I'm not taking your time, there's one Aishwarya who wants to interact with you. If I'm not taking your time, ma'am.
Okay.
Kindly.
So we can end at 6 o'clock. We still have 3-4 minutes, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am. Just give me 4 minutes, please.
Yes.
Aishwarya?
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, Aishwarya. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I want a small clarification, ma'am. There's a commercial lease deed, and during the times of COVID, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes. Yes,
Aishwarya, you're audible. You are taking. Yes, you're audible. You can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. There's a commercial lease deed, ma'am. So there is a force majeure clause in the lease deed. Can they invoke suspension of rent in this time of COVID, ma'am?
There are so many lawyers on this group. I think I'm going to ask one of them to advise you.
Ma'am, probably she would like to hear it from the horse's mouth, ma'am.
I can't.
Okay, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Ma'am, if you would remember, I had first wanted one Mr. Prakash. He has just sent a WhatsApp, ma'am. Kindly bear with him. And this will be the last question.
Okay.
There is a conditional exemption to accommodation services to carry on its business during lockdown period. Whether force majeure clause is applicable to them.
See, in general, I would think everybody would be entitled to invoke force majeure. Whether it would apply in every particular contract or not has to be on the basis of the contractual conditions in each contract. It would not be abnormal for people to invoke force majeure, but whether it will apply or not, every case will depend on the facts. and the contracts and the terms and conditions.
Ma'am, and the last one is from Mr. J. Ravindran, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is not a question, this is a request. Several requests have been coming to me that you should address a topic on IPR.
Okay.
There are several requests in my WhatsApp, personal WhatsApp.
Okay.
They requested that ma'am should address a topic on IPR on a later date. And I would be thankful, ma'am, if you accept our request.
Next month,
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Snega, propose a vote of thanks.
Ma'am, in spite of your schedule, in spite of all this, you have given your precious 1 hour to our seminar, ma'am. And the first thing I would like to thank you is for striking a very cordial note with us by addressing the gathering in Tamil, which took everyone by surprise. At least I was very surprised. And the way the Tamil was spoken was, it really gave us a sort of, that is why this seminar went into such a cordial thing, into a very long interactive session, ma'am. Thanks a lot for putting the entire session of a big topic into a very nutshell, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am, and we are looking forward for you to again come into the seminar with your favorite topic, ma'am.
Thank you. Nandri ellarkum.
Oh, ma'am, so nice of you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Nice to meet you all.